Hi, my name is Jeff Markich, and today I'm going to be doing my informative speech. In my audience today, I have my wife Jade, her sister Jess, and cousin Dana. I'm going to briefly scan the audience and then hand the phone over to my wife, and then I will be beginning my speech, which is when you can start recording and starting the timer. Hello. Just a fun fact, according to Lexington law, total revolving consumer credit debt reached $1.27 trillion in March of 2018. Today I wanted to talk to you about ways to successfully and easily establish good credit, since that was something that was never taught to me, especially in high school. Personal testimony I wanted to provide to you was at the age of 18, that's when I decided it would be beneficial to me to begin building and establishing credit at a young age, because I knew it would benefit me in the future. I opened up my first credit line and faithfully paid it off each month to establish a positive payment history. And also, having good credit, it's been beneficial so far, helping me and my wife, because it allowed us to get a good rate when we purchased our first home at 21, and it also allowed us to successfully purchase 3 vehicles with low interest rates. Having good credit can actually open many doors for your future, and according to Barnes, credit may play a more vital role in your life than you realize. From college students to working professionals, building and maintaining good credit, it's essential to everyone and his or her long-term financial security. Good credit can also prepare you for big life events. Some of those events include buying a house or renting an apartment, purchasing or leasing a vehicle, or even applying for large loans or additional credit lines. If you see here, this is just a brief pie chart to show you that just how your credit score is calculated. The blue here, which is majority, calculating for 35%, that's your payment history. And then down here in yellow is around 30%, which is your credit utilization. And then you also have your credit age, which is 15%, along with the different types of credit at 15% and number of inquiries at 10%. So all of these factors go into helping calculate and determine how your credit score is established. There's several steps you can take in order to establish good credit. Number one being applying for a secured credit card is a great place to start, because someone who wants to build credit, that's usually the first step you have to take to establishing credit. Second step, you will use the card like any other credit card. You'll buy things, make payments on or before the due date, which is beneficial because it would incur less interest. And interest would also incur if you don't pay your balance in full, according to O'Shea. Another route that someone can take is finding a trustworthy cosigner to help establish credit, because this is also beneficial when you're making a large purchase or investment. Then also, last but not least, one can add or become an authorized user on some other form of credit line or loan with someone who's reliable and already has established credit, because these people are seen as more trustworthy and established to the creditors and less of a liability. Let's begin with the first step. The first step in order to establish good credit is applying for a secured credit card. Applying for a secured credit card is perfect for beginners, because people with little or no credit at all, this is usually the best step that they can take, since they're deemed as somewhat of a liability. Sometimes this may require an annual fee. Me personally, when I opened up my very first credit line at 18, I believe my first annual fee was like $35 with one of the credit cards that I opened up. There's also unsecured credit cards, because these let you buy things without having to put down a deposit, but good credit may be required for approval, so sometimes that's not always the first option for you. And then there's secured credit cards, which are backed by a cash deposit, which protects the lender in case you may miss any payments, and this also acts as your credit limit, according to Porter. There are also many different creditors you can open a credit line with, and as you see here, I've listed some ranging from Discover to Citi, Capital One, American Express, Chase, and even Wells Fargo, which isn't listed up here. There's many different creditors where you can open up a line with, And when trying to establish credit by using credit cards, it's also important to make small purchases initially and gradually paying them off in order to establish a good payment history. When I was 18, my very first card, as I mentioned, was a Capital One. Even though I started out with a very small credit limit, I faithfully made the payments and such, which allowed me to increase my credit limit at a young age, and then that allowed me to apply for more credit cards and whatnot. It's smart to not overspend on a credit card because even with having a high credit card utilization, that can have a negative impact on your score, as I mentioned by referencing the chart earlier. Keep your credit card balances low. A great rule of thumb is to keep your balances under 30% of the available credit limit, according to Barnes. Let's examine the second step. Another route that someone can take is finding a trustworthy cosigner when making a large purchase or payment. Cosigners are beneficial because this allows you to basically piggyback off of that person because they're using their credibility to basically vouch for you. This is someone who probably has a higher income or a much more established credit limit and score because they're not deemed as a liability since they already have that established credit. So, for example, my wife and I both signed the papers when we took out a mortgage on our house because this was seen as less of a liability since we had two sources of income and we both had relatively good credit scores at the time, so that just worked worked well with each other. Adding a cosigner to your student loan application can also be a smart financial move because according to a new analysis from online student loan marketplace, the research found that borrowers who added a cosigner to their private student loan applications were more than 5 times more likely to be approved for a loan. And it's also important to remember that, however, the cosigners are doing you a favor, so if you fail to make the payments faithfully, then they're the ones that it's going to reflect poorly on because your cosigner is also liable if you don't make the payments and such, since they also legally sign their name on a document. Lastly, the third step is a person can add or become an authorized user or some other form of credit line or loan with someone who is much more reliable and already had established credit to begin with. The downside to being an authorized user is you're at the mercy of the primary cardholder. Paperno says that if they lose their job and can't make the payment, then that reflects poorly on your credit. One thing to remember is that you don't even need a credit card if someone adds you as an added user to their account. They're basically just putting your name on the credit line, and when they faithfully make the payments, that also looks good on you since you're an added user. For example, my wife and I are added users on practically majority of our credit lines since we share our finances, and that helps both of our credit scores when we pay off a balance on a card. This is also a very smart idea for parents who have children who aren't 18 yet because even though they're not old enough to establish or open up their own credit line, this is allowing their names to be on a document, and as you faithfully and continuously make the payments on these cards, that's ultimately helping their credit score while they're not even an adult yet. So starting good credit practices at a young age can warrant a better future. Knowledge and responsibility that comes along with maintaining this can be hard work sometimes, but I assure you that it's one of the smartest decisions you'll make throughout your life because good credit can open up many doors for you. The steps you take in order to establish good credit include applying for a secured credit card, finding a trustworthy cosigner, and becoming an authorized user on some form of credit line or loan. So, according to Gregory, if you don't take good care of your credit, then your credit isn't going to take good care of you. Thank you for your time.